What's going on, everybody? My name is John Michael. Thanks for tuning in. For those that are new here, I am a strongman competitor and a personal trainer. And the purpose of this session, the purpose of these videos is for me to review my tape so that you guys can take something that you like, learn something from the way I think about training, um, but also just for me to review myself and to get better. But it's all about sharing knowledge. It's all about getting better. Like I mentioned, I'm a personal trainer. So if there's any questions that you have, please reach out to me. If you're curious about my thinking, why I did something, why I didn't do something, things like that, or if you want to work a little bit more one-on-one intentionally, or having at least those conversations, happy to do that. So just leave a comment. But this is just a film session, and I'm just going to talk through what I am thinking about, why I did certain things, what I felt, but just the overarching goal given the context of this particular workout. So let's give it a watch. So this call it maybe like 300 pounds or so. So the focus of right now, I'm pretty happy with the pick, not too bad, and I'm not typically the frame is a pretty quick movement. It's more of like a race, so like intentionally you'd want to be running. But my focus was not so much the running aspect. Was I wanted to be very balanced in my approach. I wanted to be very I wanted to load my hands effectively so that I wasn't compensating because this part of your hands are a little bit stronger than your pinkies. However, the pinkies are it allows you to basically use your whole body. It encourages you to use your whole body more so. We intentionally think about this, but we don't intentionally think about your pinky or ring finger, right? So you get your lat from an ergonomic standpoint, you just get more, you can use more of your hand, which has cascading effects through the rest of your body. So the focus of this was to just feel good and stretch my shoulders out a little bit, my upper back, get that activation as well as feel my glutes. But I'm moving with weight. So sure, it's whatever 100 pounds, but the point was not so much the absolute load, but it was just moving with weight in a way that felt good and regenerative. So this is the first set that I did. I did a working set upwards. This was kind of towards the end of the workout. With again, the whole focus was just to feel good. So let's take a look. So the starting position, take a look upon that. So I was getting my hands loaded. All right, so let's talk about a few things. This particular, so my lower back, I like that. I like that. That's not too bad. But the thing that I really enjoyed about this was that my whole upper back was pretty. It didn't flex at all. It didn't like crumble. It was pretty stiff in that regard. Though it's important to know that I'm not trying to be stiff. I'm trying to be athletic and capable. But I also don't want to bend my back. You don't want to have. You probably have heard the term cat back. I'm not interested in cat back for this. But like nice, pretty nice. My arms are long. My hips underneath me a little bit. Um, yeah, not too shabby. Not too shabby. And then so the thing that's I could do a little bit better moving forward. So let's kind of go back a little bit. So you notice that how upon lifting and then I step, notice how the frame kind of pendulums. So something that I could improve on is flexing my arms, tricep extension essentially, a little bit harder to kind of counterbalance that. Now, given the weight, and it's a decent event for me, I'm not going to downplay it, but it's not bad. It's not bad. I Well, decent's relative. I enjoyed this, and this is well within my capability. Um, but these types of cues will surface themselves as as the weight increases, right? But I could extend my arms a little bit better, like a tricep extension, and Um, that's going to help stabilize the frame so that it doesn't pendulum in such a way. Because again, at these higher weights, as the weight gets more intense, or even just like a different frame, different kit, um, that might throw it off, and that's how, God forbid, injuries. But really, it's just inefficiency. It makes the movement harder than it need be. Okay, so definitely want to encourage you guys to flex your triceps and gals. Flex your triceps upon picking up a frame and just in general throughout the movement, because it'll help from a stabilization standpoint. So something that stands out to me as well, and this is something I'm actively working on. You might notice, sure, it could be the camera angle, but if you notice, my left shoulder is a touch higher than my right. So that's something I want to make sure that I have a very straight spine through this whole thing, and I don't want to necessarily like slouch or hunchback or anything like that. So it's good to. It's not a big deal. Like there's never going to be a perfect. Uh, don't seek perfection. Aim for it, but uh, don't stress over it. Perfection's an illusion. Um, but yeah, like that right there, I might be just a little bit hugging my shoulder a bit more than I need be, um, which just makes the movement harder because at the end of the day, one, you're flexing that muscle more when you don't need to, but also two, you pick up the thing higher. Game of inches, game of millimeters, that stuff adds up. So, but overall, like I'm being very nitpicky at this, and then just holding at the end here, holding, just to work on the grip. Make sure that I'm loading my full hand. Mentioned earlier about the pinky and the ring finger, so just making sure that was that. And yeah, so not a bad session, not a bad session, or set rather, not a bad set. All right, so that was set one. This is set two now. So up about 90 or so pounds. So still just focus is to feel good. It's not to necessarily push weight, but it's to do it properly so that whenever the weight does become heavier or, like a competition weight or something like that, um, one, I'm used to it, but also two, it's not, there's a certain level of comfort that I think is important to be aware of. So before getting into this, the thought that I've learned very intimately, probably the last year and a half, is not so much about not to be afraid of the weight, because sometimes it's just like, yeah, there's a little bit of nerves. I mean, earlier today I was watching Thor Bjornsson, him talk about a deadlift session, and he's like, yeah, like there's always nerves. So at whatever weight, whatever level of sport you are, there is going to be some level of nerves. But there's also, in contrast of that nerves, or to counter those nerves rather, I think it's very important to be confident in your ability and the intentional call out or the conscious awareness of I am safe, I am capable, and letting my body do the thing. So understanding that, yeah, it might be hard, but I'm safe and capable. And teaching yourself how to perform with that thinking, I think is very important because that is not something that I've been in the game for about 10 years at this point, a little over 10 years at this point. And strongman specifically touch under that, but point is just attentional weightlifting for over 10 years. And I never heard of that until relatively recently, but it was because I had to essentially climb out of this hole of injury. I mentioned, I think I mentioned, if for I've torn my bicep, shoulder surgery, torn my calf, twisted my ankle, broke my wrist. Now, football was for the wrist, basketball was the ankle, but point is, injuries happen. And being comfortable with the movement that you're performing and understanding that that plays in to how you move. It sounds kind of corny, but it's real. If you can think it, you can do it. And having that confidence in yourself will, for whatever reason, have a biological impact to how you do the thing. So belief makes your biology work better. All right, so let's take a look. Now that that's done, let's take a look at this set. So again, up 90 pounds, still focus, solid. So okay, so like you see how it dipped there a little bit. That gets back to what I mentioned on set one with the triceps, and I did that little hop there because I was practicing the turn as well. So you want to flex your triceps as much as possible on things like a farmer's, on things like a frame like this, and you want to make sure that you're using all four fingers. So again, we typically do this. We don't really intentionally do this, but that's like half your hand. Call it 40%. Solid hold. Solid hold. So let's go back real quick. So, boop. All right, not too bad. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that ain't bad. Basically looked the same. I will say that it swung a little bit more, pendulummed a little bit more. So it's just good call out. good call out on that. And then, so let's see. How did okay. So one thing as well that is a good practice is the the pick. So notice how it's kind of like I'm almost like a little bit with my upper back. The way that I think about that, and I learned this from probably one of the best deadlifters on the planet, Sean Shoemaker. Dude's a stud. Highly encourage you to look him up. He like it's like a 105 kg. He deadlifts like 800 pounds. It's ridiculous. But he talks about in his deadlift ebook, he talks about kind of uh like giving a piggyback ride, like kind of how you like on a piggyback ride. You want to mimic that. So that I think is a really good from the side it'd be easier, but I think that this is a good kind of like see like I led with my upper back and the top of my head. I didn't cat back, but I led with the top of my back. Sorry, the top of my head and my upper back. And then again, just tried to be expansive, just as big as expanded as possible, right? And yeah, not too bad, not too bad that is. All right, so this is the last set. Touch before that. Let me go back. All right, so this is the last set. Um, went up about 100 pounds. Top set. This is getting to the decent. You know, this is a solid challenge. Solid challenge. But again, the it stays the same. I'm looking for my hands to be balanced. I want to use my whole hand, which allows me to use my whole arm, which allows me to use my whole body in theory. And you want to have the same thing but different for your feet. Just utilizing as close to 100% of my skin suit as I can. That's what it's about. So we'll give this a watch, and then I have thoughts. I have thoughts on that pick. Yeah, the pace. Yeah. Whatever. It's still solid turnaround. Solid turnaround. Let's see. How long does it take? Up, 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 up. All right. I have other thoughts. I have other thoughts. See, this is why it's important. This is why it's important. Um, ain't bad. And then I want to hold it for as long as I can. But I'll tell you right now, I felt like this was sliding. Yeah. I mean, hey, I held it, so that's pretty cool. But all right, so let's take a look. I have thoughts. Mm-hmm. Just talk about life, right? This is what you do. You talk with the homies, do the thing before or after the life advice. I just know what. Okay, here we go. All right. So we mentioned, or I mentioned in the earlier. All right, my upper back. So, and you want to have like the little, like you're picking up like a piggyback ride. So I bet you can see. Let's take a look. All right. So that, yeah, my head's to the top, but like notice that little like mound in the middle of my back. So this to me, I think it's a positioning thing that I need to get my hips a little bit further back because the flex showcased here instead of here. Now, I understand that it might just be like, oh, like, what are you talking about? Blah, 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 blah. Totally valid because it doesn't look that different. But the difference is important. Yeah. So, and then like, I hope, well, I don't know if you can see, but what I see is because of this being a little bit lower in the middle of, so instead of my upper back, you know, doing a piggyback pickup, it's in my middle back, which means that the physics are off a little bit here comparatively, which means that here is a little bit different, right? And so it's one of those things where it's kind of like a ripple effect. So because the load is not as high up onto my shoulders as possible, the rest of the body compensates. And thankfully, I'm able to overcome that, what I'll call inefficiency. But again, that's not the point of this weight. This weight is to teach me how to move in such a way and be comfortable um, for the heavy weights, right? right? Like my ambitions and such are natural or nationals and worlds and such, and this frankly is just not going to cut it. And that's okay because maybe it's the friends we made along the way, right? But take that one with you. Think about your upper back, and then but like solid lockout and the pacing of the feet. I mean, at this point, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not uh, resorting back to improper movement patterns or resorting back to compensations that I might not get the best out of. Right? All right, that was okay. Because it's here's the thing as well. Once you learn how to do something and teach your body how to do the thing, it's very possible to unlearn that movement pattern and relearn a more efficient movement pattern. However, you require a certain level of stimulus to, and stimulus being load, is you require it in order to undo it because you ingrained and imprinted in your body how to do the thing with heavy load. So you need heavy load again, moving that heavy load differently to undo the improper way. Let me know if you have questions because it's kind of like a huh? The funk and waggles are you talking about? Totally fair, but you need a certain level of weight in order to undo what you did. So, but let's see. Do you notice anything about how I picked up? Does that look? Yeah, right there. Do I look? Am I square or am I something different? Even if it's like, is it a like? Oh, like it's like whatever. Listen, I understand that perfection's an illusion. However, this, like, to me, I can clearly see that I am shimmying, favoring to the one side versus squared. Because you see how I kind of like corrected after I got to a certain length portion. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, yeah, I kind of, right, like we're all, oh, yeah, yeah. So, and then I think I mentioned on the left shoulder. So that's a little bit, yeah, I did. Um, I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit, side to side. Ideally, I'm just like, but part of it is the pace as well. Like when you're running with it, it's not going to be nearly as what I'll call wobbly. But that's a really good that right there. That's a really good find. It's proprio bit of scran that is. And then yeah, I just like I can see my left shoulder. Um, I mean, it's not bad. Like again, like this. I'm being very particular because of where I want to get to and such. But like this isn't bad. It just depends like what is your tolerance, what is your standard. It's good feedback, but it is like if this is the best I'll ever get, I don't think it's the best. I think that's part of it. For me, I know I can do better, so that's why I hold myself to that. But then, yeah, not too bad. Like I'm not wobbling, not after a while, and it ain't bad. And then I'm holding this, but I'm telling you right now, like I felt, and you can kind of see a little bit of a gap there. See that little space? So it's starting to slide out of my left hand. But, but yeah, overall not too bad. I'd give that like a strong C plus feels low. B minus, I give it like a strong. It's like right on the cusp of a B minus and a B because um, context on the day was I was feeling a little achy. I wanted to feel some heavy weight in my hands and practice some stuff and some things, and I think I did that. But I think we can if we run the tape again or take notes on rather what we identified. Um, there's some things to improve on to get better because if I'm making those types of what I'll call mistakes, or if I'm doing those types of um, areas of opportunity with like 200 more pounds on the frame, I'm like, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. But that's another 200 pounds. So it's not this weight. So I need to make this. If all three sets look the same, that letter grade's closer to an A. But that's what it's about. It's all about learning. So But thanks y'all for stopping by. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, John Michael, happy to help. Reach out on any questions. I'll catch you next time.